Good evening everybody and welcome to the vlog for Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. I hope you're all having a splendid day. So in today's video I'm briefly going to go over an issue that I was facing today and tell you a little bit about how I overcame that issue. So let's get right into it. The issue that I was experiencing today was a really strange one, and I'm still not really entirely sure what was causing this behavior, but it seems to have been fixed now. Essentially what was happening is the player was moving around on the screen, and every once in a while the player would just randomly shoot off in a different direction. Just like a real quick and then right back on track how it was going. And it was really weird. I was trying to figure out what exactly was causing this behavior. At first I thought it had something to do with the collision between different objects, because this behavior seemed to happen after it collided with a different object. But that wasn't always the case. There were a couple times where I didn't touch anything and the player would still jump. Now the really annoying thing is this was not happening on a consistent basis at all. Sometimes I'd play the game and that wouldn't happen at all. Other times it would happen right away, and sometimes it would happen after like a minute or two. And bugs like this can be really difficult to figure out what's causing them and how to fix them, because it's really difficult to replicate the behavior of the bug. And if you can't reproduce the behavior, then you really don't know if you fixed it or not, which is why I'm not entirely sure if I fixed it. But after I changed some things, it's been pretty stable the rest of the day, and I'll talk about what exactly I changed in a little bit. But the key here is really just staying calm. You know, I was like pulling my hair out for most of the day today, trying to figure out why the hell this was happening. But really sometimes you just kind of need to step back, take a breath, and then just look through the issue very methodically. And so this is why debugging tools are super useful. So the coding environment I use for scripting is Microsoft Visual Studio. And the nice thing about Microsoft Visual Studio is that you can connect it with Unity for debugging purposes. And when you do this, you can play through your game, and then when certain conditions are met, your code may hit what's called a breakpoint, which is something that you as a developer set in your script. And once the code hits this point, the game pauses and all code execution ceases to a halt. Now this is super useful because you can look at the exact value of every single variable at that instance. And so for me personally, I set up a couple breakpoints that triggered when the player went well past the maximum velocity. And something I noticed pretty early on when the player was jumping around is that they're actually moving well past the maximum velocity that I've set for the player. So then I was able to run my code, and when the player darted across the screen, all my code stopped, and I could look at my scripting editor and see what all the values were at that exact moment. So then I went down this whole path of, okay, well this value should not nearly be this high. All right, why is this value being this high? Where is this value being set? Is there some random spot in the code that this is being modified for some reason? And then so at that point I was able to really methodically go through which sections of my code that were affecting these certain values. And ultimately I found out what I believe is the issue. And the issue ended up being a little bit of an inefficiency anyways, so I was able to scrape that out, and once I did that, it's been working fine ever since. Basically I was adjusting the target velocity in the update function and then again in the fixed update function before using that variable in the fixed update function to actually move the player. And just as a reminder, the update function is called once every frame that your game is running, and the fixed update function runs on a set timed interval, so it's completely independent of frame rate. So that's why you want to do player movement and physics calculations in the fixed update function as opposed to the update function. Anyhow, I just removed that adjustment out of the fixed update function, and so it's only being adjusted in the update function because I want that to be updated every single frame. And then the fixed update function can just reference the most current target velocity set in the update function and be able to move the player within the fixed update function. So anyways, my advice of the day is be sure that the tools you're using to develop have sufficient debugging functions, and make sure you know how to use them well, because knowing how to use them can save you a ton of time in the long run. And admittedly, I'm still learning a lot about the debugging tools that I use. I mean, shoot, I learned a few new things today about them, but knowing something is better than knowing nothing. I mean, I've met some people who are just like, oh no, I don't need to worry about using those debugging tools, I can figure it all out on my own. And yeah, that may be true, but there really is nothing wrong with using debugging tools. Like, who are you trying to impress here, bud? Because it's a lot easier, and it's also just a really important skill to learn if you want to develop games professionally, or all other software for that matter. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day.